All right, welcome in. A May 19th post-Preakness edition of BloodHorse Monday. Sean Collins, Louie, Rabaut, hanging out with you for the next however long this episode ends up taking. Sean, welcome back from Baltimore. The two of us, of course, traveled to Charm City over the weekend. I want to thank everyone that we got to hang out with. And frankly, I wanted to start a little bit of gratitude here. Just how well we get treated every time we go to Baltimore.
Oh, yeah.
Just the folks at Pimlico, but also just the folks who cover racing in the state of Maryland, etc. It's really just a nice, just a great feeling around it. And I'm not putting down any of the other big race days or whatever else. There's just something really charming about the Preakness. Really easy to cover with the with Stakes Barn. Everybody's kind of in the same spot. Your impressions, though, we're lucky guys, you and me. We get to travel for these races. We get to take a lot of these in. You know, I take for granted that I get to go to the Kentucky Derby every year, for example. I'll be at another Breeders' Cup this fall, etc. But the last Preakness at Old Pimlico,
it was emotional.
Okay, why?
It's interesting because
there's no easy answer to that question.
Yeah, because I mean, we all know it needs to go, and we all know it needs to be rebuilt. And so, but when it got to the race after the Preakness, the Arabian race, the President's Cup, I got very emotional during the post parade. Tears were starting to come up. It's a place I got a lot of sentimental memories at. My dad and I went to the Preakness a couple times when I was in high school. This was my 8th Preakness overall.
Nice.
And it was one of those things, where as they were running that last race, kind of some of those memories, me standing on a plastic chair getting pelted by rain as American Pharaohs running past me in the stretch. If I took one side step, I would have probably died off that chair.
Totally.
So I slipped off that chair. So
that 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Before that, the 2015
I don't even know if it was 20 minutes. Might have only been. It felt like 20 minutes. Might have only been.
Well,
like 10.
by the time they maneuvered everybody through the rain and got all the horses out there and all that stuff, it was wild. And I was sitting next to Julien Leparoux on the plane the next day after the Pharaoh, because that was my first Preakness, believe it or not.
That was my first one.
Okay,
too.
That's pretty.
We were destined. For
yeah,
this
no
show.
kidding. Who knew? Full circle. I sit next to Julien Leparoux, and by the way, baller move. Speak French with Julien Leparoux on a plane.
Yeah,
on the way back.
That's impressive.
People look at you like, "Whoa, who's this guy?" And at the time, of course, I was just a dude going to the Preakness. But he said that when the jocks weighed in after the Preakness, they were all carrying between 15 and 20 pounds of water weight.
That's insane.
So American Pharaoh carried an extra 20 pounds, and then 3 weeks later went ahead gate to wire the Belmont.
Yeah, he doesn't get enough credit for that.
Unbelievable.
But it was just memories.
Well, how good that 3-year-old crop too was. I mean, Frosted's in there. I mean, that's a legit
Dortmund.
It's a great crop.
But just memories like that came back into my mind. And I remember I texted my dad. My dad wasn't able to come this year.
Sure.
And so I texted him. I was like, oh, thanks for all the memories. Thanks for taking me to all the Preaknesses. And it was emotional watching that last race. And it was one of those things. I actually skipped going to the post-race press conference for the Preakness just because I wanted to watch the last race at Pimlico. Yeah. So I'm glad that I did. It was sentimental. I was there Sunday morning before I left, walking through the grandstand, and got emotional again. It was just, it's sad because it's a place where there's been so much history. There's been so many memories there. And, even though I definitely think it needs to go and we need to get a new one
doubt
here,
about it. That's right.
It was sad to say goodbye. And,
I
was never going to step in there again.
What I equated it to is the greasy spoon you grew up with, or the dive bar that you love, or maybe the house you grew up in. It wasn't very nice before your parents, the job worked out for them or whatever.
Yeah.
You moved to a nicer house, but you have the memories of that place that it's yours.
Yeah.
Right. It's just yours. And I think all of us feel some kind of weird ownership about Pimlico.
Yeah.
All of us who have gone and really loved and had great memories there, we have this sense of ownership of Pimlico that is, I don't have about other tracks, and I don't know why. There isn't anything that I can point to individually or frankly, even on a list of 2 or 3 things about Pimlico, other than I just always have a nice time when I go. Yeah. The people are always kind of really like Baltimore. I hate how people your age now talk about the vibes or whatever that means, but they're immaculate. They're great. It just whatever's going on. I think part of it is everyone just knows what they're getting into with Preakness. They know what it is, and so they just decide before they get there they're going to have a good time, and I love that about them.
And I think part of it too is we go to Churchill every week, so Derby week is special, but then next month and a half we're still there every day. That's right, yeah. Pimlico over the years, as it's fallen apart, essentially, it pretty much is only open for the Preakness.
Right.
So it really is just, that once a year we all show up, we're there for just that week. It's that very special week, and then we leave. We don't see it again until we have that.
It's almost like
week again
Augusta
next year.
National on the golf side, right? Where you go one time a year, and it's like, oh, we're at Augusta. Right? And now I know. I want to be clear to everyone listening. I know Augusta is the opposite of whatever Old Pimlico is. I want to be very clear. But it's the same kind of feel, right? You only get to do that once a year. It's not like Aqueduct. We went for the Wood Memorial this year, for example. I could have gone the next day and gone to races, right? That kind of thing. Pimlico would have been done until next year, right? I mean, so that's or until October or whatever they wanted to do. And so, maybe that's part of it. I think too, for a guy like me, I've told the story at a lot of other places too. So if people are hearing it again, I apologize. But I grew up in the upper Midwest in old unrenovated stadiums. Yeah. And so Pimlico is just comfortable that way. It reminds me of Tiger Stadium in Detroit. It reminds me of the Monster on the Lake in Cleveland. It just reminds me of those stadiums that were, I'm sure, at some point glamorous and nice and all of those things. And Pimlico certainly has the feel of a place that in the 50s or something would have been, the deco art that hangs on the walls and that kind of stuff would have been just absolutely glamorous. Yeah. But those days are long gone. And like you said, time to move on to the next thing. But of course, journalism goes ahead and okay.
How do you describe what this race was like?
It's a really fantastic question. And I made a joke in a piece that I wrote at another outlet that it's, I think, dependent on how you bet the race or how you analyzed it beforehand. If you think that journalism caused a foul or if someone else caused a foul, if there was a pathway there, if there wasn't a pathway there. Okay. This is where I think I'm a little different than other people that do the horse racing podcast thing. Was this different than Maximum Security?
Yes.
Why?
Because he was,
because the favorite won the race that he pushed his way through?
No, I mean, when I looked at the overhead of this race, it looked to me like goal-oriented came out enough for there to be definitive reason for journalism to think he was, or for Umberto to think that he was okay to go forward into that spot. I think that spot was there. I think he got into that spot before goal-oriented, then came back in. So in my opinion, I think that was...
So goal-oriented, in this case, by the way, we're just doing...
Yeah, this is all...
Shifted to the right.
He shifted
to the right. And journalism then had like the 2 or 3 path to move into.
Yes. And he moved into it before it started to close. So therefore, I believe, but both based
off course, by the way,
rules,
Clever again is on the rail in this grouping of horses as well, the 8 horse there.
I think the spot was there and he got into it early enough to where, in my opinion, you can't put the blame on journalism here. Okay. That's my opinion.
Okay. I would not have made a change either. I want to be very clear. I also would not have made a change in the Maximum Security Derby.
I would have made a change in the Maximum.
You and everyone else. I know I'm very much in the minority on that. So I was glad to see. I expected. That's interesting. I expected a 5-minute inquiry, just because there was bumping in the stretch. Of course, right? I mean, like if that were this is what I had to hear after the 2019 debacle. By the way, was if this were Claving race at Parks on Wednesday, they would look at it. Well, it's Kentucky Derby, number 1. We're not at Parks on Wednesday, and number 2. Okay, and then they took the 20 minutes or 22 or whatever it was. Are you surprised there was no pause at all?
Well, they did look at it. It did not take long enough to where
no flashing lights on the screen, none of that kind of stuff.
By the time journalism got back to the front side, the inquiry was over. They probably could have taken a little bit more time to look at it, but now.
Okay, so you said there wasn't a foul. Okay, and that's fine.
That doesn't. Even though there's not a foul, in my opinion, you should still look at it.
Perfect. Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify.
Exactly.
Because I think we're very much on the same page there, where you got to look at it.
Yeah.
For sure. And frankly, they probably should look at it. Unless it's very clear there's nothing at all, you should look at it. Right? I mean, it's just how it works. But
when you see a horse do what Clever again did, where he essentially hits the rail and the jockey has to ease up, you have to look at that.
Right.
Now, as far as, I do think that it was kind of, I think, well, before we get into what we really think, why don't we actually watch what happened here?
Can we do that on this show?
We can do that.
How about that?
We've been doing that all along. So let's watch along, or if you're listening to us, listen along.
You'll hear the stretch
from Larry Coleman.
There you go, from Larry Coleman, NBC call here of the Preakness 150.
Journalism is getting closer now. He's behind a wall of horses. He's looking for a place to go, and he's got nowhere to go. Oh, he bumped hard with goal-oriented. In the meanwhile, Gosker's running the race of his life, and Sandman has entered the scene, and he has moved up on the far outside. Journalism is still running on. He's back into second. He might even win it. Here's the wire. Oh, my goodness. Journalism has won.
There you go. He does pass somehow through that eye of a needle there. There you go. thoughts? I mean, by the way, Gosger, race of his life. A little bit of hyperbole in race 4 of his career, but yes, but it was for sure.
Yeah.
By the way, that was my smartest moment of the weekend. I told everybody I thought Gosger was set up for a massive showing here.
I could not believe Gosger was 20 to 1 in the morning line. I could not believe he went off at 15 to 1.
Hey, Billy was worse odds than he was for a little while. Or lower odds, I should say, at least. Yeah.
There were 3 graded stakes winners in this race. They ran 1, 2, 3.
Right.
It should not that was the way it went. And the fact that Gosger was allowed to be as high odds as he was is ridiculous when he was one of the only 3 that came in with the credentials. And he ran like it. And I saw a lot of people over the last 2 days, kind of commenting on his ride, like, oh, he got lucky that he just happened to be. No, that's a good horse, and he's a developing horse, and he's going to be one of the horses that's probably going to be a player in this division for the rest of the year. And he ran like it.
It's one of my least favorite things that we do in horse racing, and I'm saying we on purpose. I try not to do this. I hope I don't do this very often, but like people crapped on Seize the Grey winning the Preakness last year.
Yeah,
shame on everyone that did that. I mean,
he comes back with another grade 1 later in the year.
After winning a grade 2, after winning the Pat Day Mile, we act like he was some bum horse coming in out of a claimer. I mean, that really does bother me. So, like, Gosger running a big race. Like, I saw Brendan Walsh at the airport yesterday. this is where we're at in these things. And some things off the record, but something I can share is he said he came out of the race really well. And instead of going back to Keeneland, by the way, he's going to be here at Churchill. Good. And so we'll see him in East Avenue in the same barn this summer. And Brendan's guy to watch this summer as we get into races. It'll be interesting. Does East Avenue do a Belmont, or since he's here at Churchill, does he do a Matt Winn? Mm-hmm. Do we see Gosger try to go back in the Belmont, right? Because it's 3 weeks.
Yeah.
He had that time off from the Lexington. Maybe they think he's good enough for the 1.25 miles. Or do we see him? Probably can't go in the Matt Winn. He's probably going to have to go in Ohio Derby and Indiana Derby, right? I mean, there's $300,000 races, $500,000 races. West Virginia Derby's coming around too, right? Those Midwest sort of derbies. I just think the Walsh barn with those 2 horses sitting out there, one to watch this summer for sure.
Yeah, and you look at, they got a perfect 1-2 punch for one in Haskell, one in the Jim Dandy later in the year, and then throw them both into the traffic.
That's exactly right. They've got some interesting runners there, but journalism's the story here for sure. And I'm not making a joke like Larry Collins did. Yeah, just kidding. I know it's the joke.
Well, all of us journalists have to get all the jokes out now, because now that he won the Preakness, that name's forever retired.
Let's be
we got to get all the jokes out now on this horse.
Very clear. Journalist, not a journalist. I want to be very clear. I have to be a journalist once in a while. I don't like it. Once in a while, like off the record conversations.
Well, you like being the host, the podcast host,
I'd like
radio.
The chair one's better for me. The commenter thing is better for me. The opinion maker, whatever. Okay, so all right. So, but legitimately, journalism wins. I know the consternation, and I understand it, of Sovereignty not going to the Preakness. We're going to see him in the Belmont if he's healthy, right? Journalism just shipped today up to Saratoga. Is this the second best option to get the rematch? In my mind, it's not even a question that's the best option.
Well, I'm going to make the maybe a hot topic kind of statement here.
A little hottie take.
Yeah, a little hottie take here. I think, based off the reaction that I have seen online from the general public, I think what happened in the Preakness caught on more than had Sovereignty been here and won. I think the amazement of the general public of journalism overcoming the traffic and still winning, I think
it's better than Sovereignty going for a Triple Crown.
I think so. I think that was one of the things. It was one of those things like Rich Strike when he won the Derby, how the general public was just so amazed at the move that he made, at the fact that he was a long shot, and the way he weaved through the field. The general public loves seeing stuff like that. I wish social media had existed for Fleet Alex back in the day to see what that would have done. But just seeing comments from people on the posts on TikTok, on Facebook, on my own YouTube videos just seeing the response from people that don't usually watch racing. I think that it actually his performance had a bigger resonation with the general public than had Sovereignty just showed up and won. Now, had Sovereignty and journalism thrown down the last 1/8 of a mile,
like they did the Derby,
it's possible there would have been some outcome to where that would have been the opposite. But I think for a Kentucky Derby winner in the Preakness, that was the absolute best result we could have gotten from the Preakness. And as a sport, we need to market the hell out of the rematch, because if we have
if the betting numbers on the Preakness are any indication, people are paying attention to this Triple Crown, despite the fact that there's been so much. Oh man, there's no Triple Crown. No one's going to pay attention. That's just not true. The numbers don't bear out people being right about that. They're not. They are not right about the interest in the Triple Crown because there isn't another runner in it. I think it's a little like the NCAA tournament this way, and I know I've made this comparison a lot, which is that we live in Kentucky. People around here watch college basketball every minute that it's on.
Yeah.
The rest of the country watches it in March and April. It's okay to say they watch the tournament. Horse racing isn't terribly different than that in that we get a much larger crowd, considerably larger, for this time of year. And I think that that's what we're learning in this Triple Crown with all of the talk of moving to races, all of the talk of the distances, and all the different conversations people are having. The general public doesn't feel that way. Yeah. They don't feel the way that people in horse racing do. We're trying to, in my mind, we're fixing a problem that doesn't exist. People bet like crazy. What, 60 million just on the Preakness race?
And you know, the one
when I went in 2019, the whole day was 99 million.
Yeah, that's insane.
Come on. I'm serious. Come on. In 2019, it was 99 million, 60 million bet on the Preakness itself this year. And I know it's 150. I get it, but still, the journalism story, the Sandman story, these are real things. Yeah. These are tangible things.
And the amount of, I mean, we talk about Sandman, all the work Griffin Johnson's been doing with, you know, getting him up on social media.
Unbelievable.
You know how many comments I saw on like NBC's post of journalism winning the race where people were talking about what a great move by Sandman going last to third. People are feeling connected to that horse. And, you know, we look at it and we look like, okay, he made his move and then maybe flattened out a little bit at the end. But, you know, the general public's looking at it like, look at how great a move he made to go from last to third.
Right.
And it was, you know, it's, you know, we have the general public's attention right now. This is always one of the things I don't think we talk about enough when it comes to stretching out the Triple Crown. We always talk about how we think that that'll keep the Derby winner in the Preakness. It'll keep more horses coming back, and therefore the general public will pay more attention. But the other side of that is the longer you stretch it out, like the NCAA tournament, like you just mentioned, people watch it because it's a short time period.
Oh,
you know, we stretch the Triple Crown out to 3 months, people forget by the time we get to the Preakness.
Guess what the NCAA
forget by the time we get to the Belmont.
It's 3 weeks. Guess what the Triple Crown is? It's 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 3 weeks of races, right? So, I mean, it is I know it's spread out over 5, but it's the same kind of thing. And we need to really think about that as an entertainment culture.
Yeah.
We need to be very careful.
I think what journalism, and I'm going to throw Sandman in here too, because I think he's done a lot.
Absolutely should.
I think between what journalism did in the race, what Sandman has done leading into the race and everything like that, I think this has shown that this is the first time where I've actually felt like we actually have a shot to keep people interested in the Preakness when the Derby winner's not there. And we just need to make sure as a sport that we are doing the proper things to market it. Because I think we saw this year it is possible. The numbers proved it from the betting standpoint. The reaction of people online has proven it. We need to, instead of getting all upset and spending 2 weeks talking about the fact the Derby winner's not there, we need to start being like, okay, what's the other thing we can market in the Preakness? And we need to go for it. And we saw this year it works when it does.
Could not agree more. He's Sean Collins, Louie Rabaut. That is our Preakness recap here. Congratulations to journalism and connections. Let's hear now from those connections. But first, of course, want to remind you about our friends down there at OBS. And of course, the weather isn't the only thing that heats up in June, having produced 2-time Breeders' Cup winners, Stormy Liberal and Golden Sense, as well as Grade 1 winners Adair Manor Yaupon and Warlight Goddess. The OBS June 2-year-old sale, 2-year-olds and horses of racing age sale, is the place to find ready-made talent ahead of the summer's top races. Before the juvenile auction season comes to an end, come see what the 2-year-old source of the world has to offer at OBS. That's June 17 and 18, just a couple of weeks. Love our folks at OBS hanging out with us here on the podcast all spring. They've been fantastic to us. So here is Umberto Rispoli, first off, of course, jockey of journalism. Man, oh man, a couple of very different rides in the Derby, and then here in the Preakness. Here's him at the press conference after.
Well, going on the backside, passing the half-mile pole, he wasn't traveling like he did travel in the Derby. And at that point, you think two things. You have no horse, or he's just too relaxed. And I think the second was the option, because as soon as I give a smack on the shoulder, he said, okay, I know what I got to do. At that point, I was trying to go outside and follow the River Thames, but I had be suggested from some top world-class rider, some Hall of Fame rider in the United States, you win this race is saving ground. And I would say thank you to Jerry Bailey for the big tips. And look, going to the half turn, I would believe it. And Clever again would go at least at the 8 pole, at the quarter pole he gets stopped. And obviously Gozer was the first one, have the jump on him. We didn't went that fast. The pace was just reasonable slow. And Flavien had some trouble to come out of there, having American Promises outside of him. He couldn't get rid of him soon. And look, going to the elbow, a little gap was open it. And I say it's now or never. So it's a horse racing. We should, I think it's a nice battle for the sports. Everybody come out safe. I'm sorry about Jose, then he had to check. And I had to give a shout to Flavien, and he straight up his horse right away. So, but from that standpoint, from where I was, when I look it up, Louise opened up 4 lengths ahead of me, and the first time I used the crop on him, he switched his lead and boom, he took off. So more I was going close to the wire, more I was looking, I was at the wire, and I said at the 16th pole, I say, okay, I think I'm gonna be late, but probably on time. So I have to give a credit to the horse because I don't see many horses. Probably was a Fleet Alex, then he did that, but he almost Jeremy Rose almost fell off from the horse, and that was for me probably the most spectacular Preakness that I ever see. But even what we saw today, this horse coming back after two weeks from a tough trip in the Derby and running against the track that he privileged, it was an amazing effort. I wish I would give him a softer race, but this is a part of horse racing, and we're here celebrating this.
Umberto, you're the first rider from Italy to have won a Triple Crown race. What does that mean?
Viva Italia!
He said he's not really that thrilled.
Viva Italia!
Actually, was something that I don't even thought. As having Frankie as my idol, you always thought that you couldn't do anything that Frankie ever done. So, Zio, if you ever listen to me, I think you have to ride a couple of more years to get one of the winners of the Triple Crown to equal me. So, but no, it's a privilege from what I say to Don on the pony. When I cross the wire, it looks like a flash of 20 years of my career went through to my head, and it's even difficult to describe the feeling when you cross the wire on those races. You just dream about that, and my wife knows how painful I am when I'm losing a race, so she would sleep I would go sleep somewhere else if I would have lost this race tonight. So, but yeah, listen, I'm proud of this, and I'm glad that then, unfortunately for my country, races doesn't go really well, but I'm glad that then I keep my flags up, and I wish then everybody over there are proud of me.
A little swaggy Umbi there. How about that? Feeling good about himself, and he should. It's interesting to hear him say that during the race, he had to say something to Flavien. Yeah, and we forget that these guys are just up there on the backs of horses, able to say, "Hey, bro, move over." Yeah. I'm sure it wasn't that polite, but he does mention Jose Ortiz on the rail. Yeah, right. And so it's very clear that he is of the opinion that you are, which is he gets into that space because it's there. It's not Clever Again. Clever Again was goal oriented. Goal oriented was on the outside. Thank you. And does come back into that path. That's Umberto's clear response there, is that's what was happening in this spot, and that Jose had to check because of it. Yeah. Right. And so he acknowledges that there's contact between him and the horse on the inside with Jose because of the contact with the horse on the outside. So it's interesting to hear him talk through that, but very fascinating to hear him say, I had to say to Flavien, yo, bro, move it over. Now, what language do you think that's in? English? It's gotta be, right?
That's probably just screaming. That's probably not even any words. Probably just like, hi,
whatever the official language of gibberish is. That's right.
But well, I gave my opinion on how I thought that he was that the spot was there for him. Are you of that same opinion, or do you think that was kind of more forced what was?
Sure, I'm just less offended by those things. Yeah, I'm just less offended by it. You look at it, if you think the best horse won and he didn't impede another horse from winning, then you let him win.
I think I do think there's a little bit of race riding that has been lost over the years to where people look at
that's Umberto said that numerous times, right?
I think that there does need to be, like, race riding is part of horse racing. Obviously, you have to do it safely, but race riding is part of the sport. And I thought this was, the spot was there. There was enough of a space for him to work his way in. He went for it. And I don't have a problem with him doing that. I don't think that in itself was the reason why anything then happened afterwards. I think that was part of either Flavian was intentionally trying to keep the hole a little bit tight, or goal oriented was just shifting in on his own. One of those two things.
By the way, that would be within Flavian's right because he was there first.
Race riding. Yeah.
He's also there first, right?
And you don't want to let another guy come flying past
especially
you.
journalism. Especially journalism. That's the horse you don't want to get past you, right? And so, no, that part I understand too. I would not have made a change. So I agree with I agree with the outcome.
The only change I would have considered would be putting goal-oriented behind Clever again. But Clever, the reason why I'm okay with the fact that they didn't do that was because Clever again was already fading out. Right. If you're looking at it from the term of did you impact better placing, I don't think so. Would Clever again have finished last? I don't know. But once you really get out of those top 5 positions anyway, it's not a difference in purse money.
Right.
So I wouldn't have done anything there. So I would have, if I was a steward there looking at it, I think I would have left it the same.
Gosger, Sandman, goal-oriented.
Heart of Honor.
Heart of Honor comes up for
sneaky good race, by the way. He's gonna with 3 more weeks to get settled before the Belmont.
Gonna try the Belmont.
Yeah, he's going on to the Belmont. I think he leaves Wednesday. Cool. Yeah, look out for a little better race from him next time.
I was gonna say, of those 4, who are you highest on going forward? I'll go with Gosger.
Journalism.
Or the ones after journalism. Yeah. So Sandman, him.
Yeah, Gosger, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Sandman, I'm interested to see what path they take with him going forward.
Doesn't he have the feel of? Let me be clear. I am not comparing the horses on talent, but he has the feel of a Sierra Leone. Takes his engine a little while to get going, and he's going to need a very specific setup to get there. And Sierra Leone's a massively talented horse.
It sounds like Mark Cassidy's going to want to put some blinkers on him going forward potentially.
Get him closer to the
pace. It's such a tough group of 3-year-olds. I do really want to see Sandman develop at 4. And like when Journalism and Sovereignty, if they both retire at the end of the year and kind of see what he has next year when those guys are gone. I'm
Sovereignty's running as a 4-year-old, I was told.
I would think so too. But you know, if he's going to go out to,
I was told,
if he's going to go out to Dubai, he'll be gone for a couple months. So
I love how you brought that up the other day and got rebuffed with extreme. They would never run in a $20 million race. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But a 12
more than 12 million, or both.
Anyway, but yeah, I do think Sandman's got a lot of potential going forward, but I do think he needs specific things to happen in order to win. But the good thing about him,
May of his 3-year-old year,
right? But the good thing about him is he always picks up the check no matter what. You can always count on him.
The effort is honest every time.
You can always count on him to make the run. It's just whether or not he gets the winning check. Yeah, but I do think Gosger's got a lot of high upside there. Goal oriented, it will be interested to see how he develops because this was a lot to ask of him. 2 weeks off of the Lions race. So, and I thought maybe they should have been a little bit more forward with him in this spot, but I do think Gosger's got the highest upside of the ones that were.
And we've seen Bob Baffert win Midwest Derbies before.
Yeah.
So and goal oriented looks like a Midwest Derby kind of horse,
and he's got
maybe a little better.
And he's got a couple other 3-year-olds, so you're going to want to spread them out. So we'll see. He's going to have a nice little summer here, I feel like. But the one thing before we move on from Umberto, the one thing I do want to give a lot of credit to is what he did after the race, where he went and did the little victory lap in front of the grandstand where he rode him out past the stands. I feel like we need more of that in the big races.
And he's encouraging the crowd to get into it.
He's encouraging the crowd to get into it. Yeah. And, you know, he left the outrider too. He went by himself and let everybody cheer for him. He stood him there for a little bit, let everybody take pictures. We need more of that kind of stuff with the big races. Obviously, probably not every horse is one that you can do that with. But for the horses
we won this $7,500 claim at Laurel Park. We're doing it. You understand me?
Yeah, if I was a jockey, I'd be doing that every race. I'd be like, "Hey, look at my horse for the 5 people in attendance on a Wednesday."
Javier Toledo's down at the end of the track. Sheldon Russell's like, "Get out of the way." Yeah, right.
But I do think at the big races, that's always such a cool moment when they do that, and I was so happy to see Umberto do that and with the crowd cheer for him, especially after that effort.
One last run at Pimlico, of course. Sean Collins, Rabaut with you here on BloodHorse Monday. Of course, Umberto's been on the show before. BloodHorse Monday bump continues. Another man who's been on the podcast before is Aron Wellman. He talked with Sean yesterday at the Stakes Barn there at Pimlico. After Preakness 150 and Journalism's win, here's what they talked about.
I'm here with Aron Wellman of Eclipse Thoroughbred Partners the day after winning the Preakness Stakes with Journalism. First off, Aron, congratulations on winning the race.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Now, just take me through the mindset. Obviously, it was a dramatic stretch run as he was kind of getting bounced around in between horses. As you're watching that unfold live, what was going through your head?
Concern, first and foremost, for the horse. It got really dicey there. Was worried about his safety, about Umberto's safety. And then, of course, just devastation that he might not have the opportunity to win the race that we thought he was there to win.
So then, feeling that devastation, when you see him just kind of pick himself up, make that run, it looked like I was concerned watching it live. I didn't know if he was going to get there or not. I wasn't sure exactly when that wire was going to come up. What was that like, just watching that happen and that feeling when he hit the wire?
You know, it sort of embodies what this game is all about. You go from that feeling of hopelessness to thinking that it was impossible to hope that somehow the horse journalism and Umberto Rispoli could make a miracle happen. And, you know, I was with my family and my daughter was hysterical crying when the physicality occurred because she, in her heart, worries so much about the horses and their safety. And I think she had given up all hope that he could win the race, as had just about anybody that was watching it, I'm sure. And then to see him extract himself, lengthen his stride, and set his sights on Gosker, all I was saying was make a miracle happen, Umby. And for him to have the bravery and the courage to overcome what he did, and then the physical talent after all of that to run a good horse and Gosker down, and not just do it by a nose or a head. It's remarkable that he did it by 3/4 of a length or a full length when all was said and done. And Umberto, he struck him a couple times to get him going. And after that, he really hand rode him from the last 7,500 yards to the wire. It's just extraordinary. It was a performance on both jockey and horse that defied logic. It was extraordinary. And for those of us that are historians of the game, you don't see that often. And to be associated with a horse and a team like this, and Michael McCarthy and Umberto, and to win a race as important and historic as the Preakness is just an enormous honor.
Well, everybody that gets into racing always talks about how you have the highs and the lows, how you can go back and forth. You experience that all in just a quarter of a mile. That's why we get into the game, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know, good friend and partner and supporter of Eclipse's, Gary Barber, he told me a long time ago, he said, you know, you can go from the penthouse to the doghouse real quick and vice versa. So we were in the doghouse there the last eighth of a mile and somehow made our way up to the penthouse, and there's no game like it. There's no venture like it. The range of emotions that you can experience in such a minuscule window of time are drastic and dramatic. And, you know, my heart goes out to Brendan Walsh and the Clark family and Louie Saez. I mean, you know, they felt the opposite emotion where it looked like their horse couldn't lose and journalism ran him down. So, you know, you're dealing with connections that feel that heartbreak at the end of the day. So, you know, that's what this game is all about, is the heartbreak and then the elation all wrapped up into one. And hopefully every owner, every stakeholder in this game gets that opportunity to feel that elation at some point, because it certainly outweighs the rough times.
Now, you mentioned, you know, how big it is to win such a historic race like the Preakness. Is there any, obviously there's a lot of pride in winning the Preakness any year, but is there any added pride winning, one, the 150th, but two, winning the final one at this Pimlico?
It's a historic race in and of its own right. You know, there's some sentimentality, of course, attached to the fact that it's the final Preakness that'll be run here. 150 in and of itself also has some unique meaning. Look, whether it was going to be torn down, this place, you know, within the next week and rebuilt or not, I think we would have held it in the same amount of esteem and the prestige, the importance, the history behind a race like this. It's really special. You know, this stakes barn here, I think anybody that's had the opportunity to be a part of it, you realize that it's a true treasure within our sport. So this is a little slice of this property that's going to be really missed. we at Eclipse have been fortunate enough to stand in that infield on that
Yeah.
cupola twice prior to the Preakness, having won the Black Eyed Susan twice. Michael, now his second Preakness. That's amazing. But that little place in that infield on that cupola, you can't help but feel the history running through your veins while you're there. And to be the last people to do it, that's pretty cool. Something we'll cherish forever. But to win an American Classic, there's nothing like it.
Well, speaking of American Classics, this is the second one now for Eclipse, having been with Taproot in the Belmont Stakes back in 2017. How big of a deal is that for Eclipse as a whole to get now 2/3 of the Triple Crown?
We started this stable, this company, to make history. It was a bold and ambitious statement when we started the company in the stable, but we've stayed true to that. There is nothing more important than classics, American classics. And, you know, we've been second and third in the Kentucky Derby. We haven't quite conquered that mission yet, but we had a Belmont with Taproot. Now to win the Preakness. For our partners, look, this is the pinnacle. This is the ultimate, and that's what they're in the game for. They come to Eclipse not just to participate in big races and classics, but to win them and to deliver wins to our deserving partners who put their faith in our program, because without our partners, there is no Eclipse Thoroughbred partners. You know, so it's incredibly special for me personally and my family, but we get such gratification and joy seeing our partners really savor these moments and see them celebrate with their families and their friends. It's what we're all in this game for. So there's nothing more important than classic wins, and it's a huge privilege to now be a Preakness winner.
And Eclipse has partnered with several other entities here with journalism. Just what is the partnership as a whole between all those different people, all those different farms? How has that come together, and just how rewarding is it to win with this group of people?
Immensely rewarding. Adds meaning to it on top of it all. You know, Eclipse bought journalism as a yearling at Fasig-Tipton, Saratoga, signed the ticket. Our good partners and supporters at Bridlewood Farm, John and Leslie Malone, George Isaacs called me the next morning. He said, I love that colt. Can we get in? And of course, welcome them with open arms. Can't thank George and his operation enough for the support and impact they've had on Eclipse. So it's a huge honor to be associated with Bridlewood, the Malone family, the Isaacs family. Bob LaPenta has been a big support of ours, and the three of us between Eclipse, Bridlewood, and LaPenta own Taproot, so we had experienced Classic Glory together. And to see what it meant to Bob yesterday was just so heartwarming. He loves this game. He appreciates it so much. And it's an honor to be associated with him. Don Alberto bred this magnificent animal and retained an equity interest in him, in his ownership. They've been pure class. The Heller family, Reed Ringler, couldn't be more happy for them. And then to have the association with Coolmore, having bought his stallion rights prior to the Santa Anita Derby, before he was even a Grade 1 winner, and the faith that they exuded in the horse, and Michael McCarthy and Eclipse for managing the horse's racing career. I don't think there's a more esteemed operation in the world. There might not ever be a more esteemed operation in this game than Coolmore, and to be side by side with them is an honor that's indescribable. So it's just class that starts with the horse, Michael McCarthy, his team, his family, Eclipse, Bridlewood, LaPenta, Don Alberto, and Coolmore. Hugely humbling.
Now, you talked about that faith that Coolmore had in him to get in him at that point. We had talked to you back before the San Felipe as well, and you were telling us that from the get-go, you've always had faith that journalism can be this kind of horse. Just remind our viewers again, what is it about him that makes him this type of horse?
Well, I remember you texted me, you wanted me to do the podcast, and you're like, can we talk about Built? And I was like...
This was right after the Risen Star Stakes.
We love Built. and he's a great horse in his own right. I said, but what about journalism?
Yeah. We were going to get to him, but I was going to wait. I was going to get you for Built first, and then I was going to be like, okay, we'll talk about journalism. But yeah, it was funny how immediately you texted back, let's talk about journalism too. So you were very excited to talk about him.
Yeah, look, he's such a unique and rare animal. He's equally as smart as he is talented physically, which is really hard to find, to have that mental constitution to compete at the highest level that matches and complements the physical attributes. And then in his last few races, we've seen the heart of a champion and the courage and bravery of a champion. So I call that a triple threat, the mental fortitude, the physical talent, and the courage, the heart, which you can't measure inside of a horse. I mean, look, I'm biased. It's impossible to be objective, but if you really try to extract yourself and independently evaluate this horse with or without any connection to him, look, he really could be one of the all-time greats. And I think what he did yesterday in the Preakness stamps him as one of those rare animals that just, you can't help but remember a performance like that and appreciate it. So it's a real privilege to be associated with a horse with all of those ingredients and the class. And I'm so glad for him that he's a classic winner, because he deserves it.
Now he could potentially in 3 weeks have the chance to become a 2-time classic winner. I know we're going to do the make sure he comes out of the race okay, make sure that he's moving strongly into the Belmont Stakes before we make an official decision. But if he does end up running, how do you see that shaking up, and how excited would you be for a rematch with Sovereignty?
Look, you're right. First and foremost, we'll just make sure that journalism himself is in position to be able to perform come Belmont. We'd love to participate and compete in that race. Look, we're sportsmen. We want to be good ambassadors for the sport. I think it would be tremendous, without a triple crown on the line, for journalism and Sovereignty to meet up. But then you've got an incredible supporting cast, and Baeza, Final Gambit. Look, we might have seen a horse in Crudo yesterday that deserves a shot. You're maybe bringing Grande into the mix. So, look, it's a really stellar crop of 3-year-olds. It kind of reminds me a little bit of that 2007 crop.
Yeah.
Curlin, who obviously is the sire of journalism, street sense, hard spun. And then you've got a great filly, Good Cheer, that, could be a rags to riches type. So it's exciting times in the game. And look, Michael McCarthy said it best when we finally put the stamp of approval on him running in the Preakness. He said, let's give the people what they want. We would love that opportunity. It would be an honor to go toe-to-toe with Sovereignty again. Belmont, Godolphin, Junior Alvarado, just such class and a good horse, a real horse. He would certainly be the headliner. And like I said, you've got a deep field after that. So it could be a Belmont for the ages. But, make no mistake, we want to be there, but the horse has to tell us that he's, up to it physically, mindset, all the things. So just want to do what's best for the horse and the industry and, of course, our partners.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time with us here, Aron. We really appreciate it. And once again, congratulations on winning the Preakness Stakes with journalism.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
All right, Aron Wellman, friend of the show, back on the show again. Okay, a couple of things. There's a lot to unpack. We'll do a couple of them. Number one, him remembering that we wanted to talk Bill. He was like, but journalism. I mean, for sure, just shoved it through. By the way,
that's the first time we ever talked about a horse in advance of a race on the podcast. So.
And he was ready.
Yeah,
and he was
ready.
right.
He was ready.
And all of the things. And so, and by the way, that's a good pair to have in your stable right now.
Oh, yeah.
Built and journalism, of course. He referenced Good Cheer in a way that I did not expect that to come as part of talking about the Belmont, but I'm here for all of it.
He definitely didn't mean he is expecting her to run in the Belmont. I don't think any of us are expecting that, but she is that kind of filly to where maybe down the line especially when you have
We thought
Godolphin.
Torpedo Anna almost win the Travers last
Exactly.
year. It
Well,
wouldn't be
you know,
so
maybe
stunning. Right
maybe
now.
she's the kind of filly. She's the kind of filly that I think would love a mile and a quarter. Maybe you see her in the Travers down the year because remember, Godolphin's got immersive in there, and when she comes back, if she comes back as good as she was as a 2-year-old, send her to the Alabama. Send good cheer to the Travers.
There's options. Yeah.
She's one of those fillies where she could make the jump if they decide to make the jump.
Aron Wellman said what I think everyone should hear and understand. For 99% of it, especially American-based owners, they want to be in these races.
Yep.
That ain't it. It's not that they don't want to be in these races. They just got to make sure it's right by the horse. There's a lot of interest to protect here. You did a really good job of pointing out how far the tentacles go off of the ownership of this horse.
Yes.
And breeding rights and all of that kind of thing. They can't just jump into the Belmont because they feel like it, right? I mean, this is a guy with a future with a bunch of babies, hopefully, right? And as part of this. And so hopefully more races, but certainly on the breeding side as well. So I appreciate him saying, look, we're sporty. We want to be in that race. We want the matchup. We know it's good for horse racing. We can't not do right by the horse. And now I think you and I are very much of the opinion that was a very satisfactory, frankly, above satisfactory answer to me. How about for you?
He's going.
I agree.
This is when I talked to Michael McCarthy the morning after the Kentucky Derby, so I knew journalism was going to the Preakness. They waited a week to say it.
Yeah.
But you can tell that answer is as long as he's not hurt and as long as he comes out of the race with the same energy he usually does, he's going to be in the race.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that was the answer. And it's good for them to take that moment to not commit and to make sure that he's going to be, 100% third race in 5 weeks. But if he's healthy, he will be there. And I think that's great.
Yeah, I will be fascinated to watch his move forward. The other thing that I appreciated about Aron was, with all the talk of moving the Triple Crown and whatever else, there's a real tendency in those conversations to put the Preakness down.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to do that. This is a great race. This is a historic race. He kept saying that, historic race like the Preakness, historic race. You saw Umberto's response to winning this race. None of this has been, despite all of the conversations, these races haven't been devalued for the people in them, for the public. Mm-hmm. We saw a record amount of betting on this. These things have not been devalued at all. So it's nice to hear that from ownership as well.
Yeah, the Triple Crown races are the 3 biggest races. And even though people want to get on the Preakness because maybe they think the fields haven't been as good as the last couple of years.
I think it's because of the Pimlico building.
I think it's probably part of that as well. But this is still one of the races.
Yes.
This is one of the ones that you dream of winning. And you saw the response from everybody. And when we talk to Michael here, he'll talk a little bit about the, his love for the Preakness as well. It's one of those races that when you get into the sport, there are 3 races you target, and these are the 3. These are the 3 races that everybody wants to win. You only have 1 shot at them with each horse. So, obviously everybody wants to win the Breeders' Cup as well, but you can come back and you can try again the next year with the same horse. You have 1 shot with this horse. And for the connections of journalism, that worked out great here in the Preakness. For the connections of Gosger, you almost got it.
Yeah.
And that's part of the thrill of the sport right here, is the fact that you can get so close, and then who knows the next time you're going to have the opportunity.
That's exactly right. And by the way, Brendan Walsh was having the moment the day after in the line getting on the airplane that Aron described exactly, which is highest of highs to immediately lows of low. And just talking to Brendan a little bit, my sense with him was, what else could you do?
Yeah.
Right. What else could we possibly do? Louie with the perfect ride. The horse showed up like crazy, didn't miss a step, drove all the way through the line. It just wasn't good enough that day. And that's horse racing. And Aron nailed it on the head there, where they got to have that moment and the Gosger folks didn't. And it's a brutal reality of the game for sure. But really appreciate him spending time with you at the Stakes Barn. He is Sean Collins. I'm Louie Rabaut. BloodHorse Monday continues on. Here's Michael McCarthy at the barn. Similar setup there with Sean as well the day after Preakness 150.
I'm here with trainer Michael McCarthy the morning after journalism just won the Preakness Stakes. It was such an impressive run from him getting through all that traffic. First off, congratulations, and just take me through your experience in the race.
Thank you. Yeah. Obviously, from the start, it was things were a little eventful. Walked out onto the racetrack. We were having a hard time getting his halter off of him. He was, I guess, he was kind of in the zone and not wanting to be messed with. So certainly grateful we were able to get the halter off him, get him kind of in a position where he could warm up properly for the race. And looked like he had a very good warm up from what I could tell. There's so much going on, but every time they showed him on the Jumbotron, it looked like he was comfortable and within himself and not warm, just enjoying himself out there.
What is your thought process when you immediately see all that traffic that he encountered coming off the quarter pole? What was going through your mind?
The first thing was, I'm glad horse nor human, nobody was harmed. Secondly, I thought to myself, I can't believe this horse is going to put up another effort like this and not have much to show for it. The fact that he got his nose down on the wire just speaks volumes about him.
What now? Obviously, he had quite a bit of bumping there. When he comes back this morning, you get to see him. How does he look?
Yeah, he looked very good last night. Certainly, you're concerned that something like that he could get cut up or what have you, but he actually was very clean-legged today.
Now, this is your second win in the Preakness. You won with Rombauer a few years back. This is becoming, a big race for you. I know you were pretty emotional after the win yesterday. Just what does winning the Preakness mean to you?
Yeah, it's an American classic. I thought we had a very good chance 2 weeks ago winning the Kentucky Derby. We were second best that day. So obviously a little bit of vindication here yesterday. Just to get to these races is a huge accomplishment. I couldn't get here without my staff, my team, my assistants, my riders. There's too many people to thank, but it's a team effort.
I know in the paddock yesterday, you kind of shared a moment with Dwayne Lucas ahead of time. And I know you mentioned earlier that you talked to Todd Pletcher almost immediately after the race. And he was one of the guy who confirmed to you that you did indeed get there. Just what does it mean to be having guys like that kind of, giving you those kind of praises on the big stage like this?
Yeah, certainly. One gentleman revolutionized the game. So it was nice to spend just a quiet moment with him, and he offered some words of encouragement. It really meant a lot to me because nobody's done it like he has. And then obviously Todd Pletcher, I've said it before, everything sort of that we do kind of runs through him and the organization and the attention to detail that we've picked up during our tenure there. So I wasn't sure we got our head down at the wire, and he kind of gave me the affirmation that we did get there. So nice to be able to, I take it as a source of pride that I spent so much time working there. So it was a good day.
I know Umberto Rispoli mentioned in the post-race interview yesterday how when he hit the wire, it felt like all 20 years of his career were flashing before his eyes. Did you have a similar kind of experience to that?
I'm not going to say it was my career flashed before my eyes, but I just a tremendous sense of relief, really, more than anything else, because my expectations for this horse had been so high. So to see him go ahead and finally kind of show racing fans and everyone in the industry what kind of horse he really is meant a lot to us.
What kind of horse is he? What was it about him early on that just set him apart from everyone else?
Good horses just do things differently. As a 2-year-old, he was getting ready faster than your average 2-year-old. He would work in company as fast or as slow as you'd like. Very easy to get along with. As we've gone on here with racing, he's just become so much sharper and so much easier on himself in the way he does things. So good horses set themselves apart. He's certainly done that.
Now, I know you mentioned yesterday in the press conference, you remember watching back to the Sunday Silence, the easygoer Preakness Stakes. What was it about the sport that really drew you in, and what was it that made you want to become a trainer?
There's a lot of things. I wouldn't know where to tell you where to begin, where I could begin. But, obviously the competition, being a fan first, and the thrill of winning. And I've had so many jobs along the way before I got to the point where I had really decided that this is the career path I wanted to pursue. I'd like to think I take a little bit of everything from all those places I've been, all those people I've worked under. And if I had to do it all over again, exactly the same way, I would.
Well, you also got to experience, this big success on this stage with your family. Just talk about the importance of kind of having them by your side here.
Yeah, family is everything. This is a pretty selfish game that we play here. There's a lot of what I call me time, just attention to what's going on at the barn or what's going on in other racing jurisdictions, and whether it's a runner for us or, going to San Luis Rey, going to Churchill Downs, the travel. My daughter, every vacation she has seems like it's centered around a horse race. So obviously very grateful to my wife and my daughter. They do a lot of the heavy lifting when I'm not around. My wife really kind of keeps all of this together. So grateful that they were here yesterday.
Now, I got to ask the question, 3 weeks from now, we're going to have the Belmont Stakes. I know we're going to do the usual. We're going to make sure he comes out of the race well. We're going to make sure that he's moving forward into that spot. What are the key things that you're going to be looking for to help you make the decision one way or the other over the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, he's just been such an easy read. I think sometimes good horses fool you because they do some things so easy. We're just going to kind of feed off of him and see if he's happy with his environment, see if he's enjoying Saratoga or wherever we choose to ship him here in the next day or so, and just kind of see, what his energy level is like. He'll probably have a little bit of a workout at some stage here before he runs. So a lot of factors will play into it. But as a 2-year-old, he ran 3 times in 7 weeks. Obviously, we've had 2 races in 2 weeks here, 3 races in 5 weeks. I said before, just knowing the type of horse he is and how hard he is, that I thought all along that he was a horse that could handle something like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time with us here, Michael. And once again, congratulations on winning the Preakness.
Thanks.
Hey, Michael McCarthy. It's personal moments there. Good job by you, by the way. It's always interesting to hear these guys talk about their families because the job is very different. The schedule and all of those things. You're out there at the track, but you're also a single young guy. Right? These are things that you can just do. He's talking about his wife, his family, all those kinds of things. It was also interesting to hear him talk about journalism himself and how durable he is, what kind of horse he is. It reminds me a lot. I know this is a little apples to oranges, but I think a fair amount of apples to apples. When Brad Cox would talk about Idiomatic, and how she was just ready, like, oh, it's the next race, let's go show up and do those things. We saw it a lot with Torpedo Anna last year. We see this with certain horses that are able to just go ahead at the very highest level in our sport and push through that way. Journalism seems to be that way. What else stood out from the interview with you?
Yeah, I mean, the same things that you just mentioned there, just, the amount of, I think people just don't pay as much attention to, the lifestyle that these trainers have to live. Right. I think that was an important point to hit on for sure, was just, the amount of sacrifices that they have to make in order to get to the point where you have a horse running in the Preakness, and so that's something that, if you're somebody who doesn't follow racing year round, you're listening to this, it's something that hopefully you can appreciate. Same thing with everybody else that's involved in this industry. You think about, somebody like Umberto, who's got to fly across the country every so often in order to go ride races. It's part of the industry that we don't really always recognize. We don't always talk about it as much. It's just, how much devotion. I mean, obviously we know everybody's devoted in this industry, but how much of that comes with the sacrifices that come with that.
Do you want to know how I know they think this is the greatest horse they've ever been around? Because he described the Preakness win as a relief.
Yes.
And and I'm being really serious. I think occasionally you see sports teams or individuals or something where it's less of a celebration. I think you could tell in that interview, Sunday was an emotional letdown for Michael McCarthy. It just was, where whatever the buildup was, because you have to imagine that guy finishes second in the Derby. He's got the best horse in the Preakness. Yeah. And he runs into that wall of horses in the final stretch. We're an eighth of a mile from the finish line. Gosner's just skip-daddling up.
Yeah.
Sandman's running up. And your horse is behind 2 other horses and trying to squeeze through. The emotion of that moment for McCarthy watching from afar going, Umberto went up the rail, here we go. And then all of a sudden they make that move and he's through. The sense of relief of him finishing there, I wonder if it was more just exhale than it was actually celebrating. I can't imagine the kind of pressure that is.
Yeah. Well, you go back 3 years ago, same exact thing with Epicenter.
Right.
He was probably the best horse in the Derby. I don't think probably. I think he was the best horse in that Derby. He comes back to the Preakness, a race everybody was handing to him going into it. And then it was just a weird way the race shook out where he didn't win. And he finished second. And it was kind of that thing where for the rest of the year, It was Epicenter couldn't get the grade 1. You were, by the time they got to the middle of the summer, people were talking about who's going to be 3-year-old champion. It's like, well, Epicenter's clearly the best horse, but he doesn't have the grade 1.
Right.
And so probably the amount of relief that winning the Travers took off Steve Asmussen and the owners there just to get the grade 1, pretty much guarantee the fact that he was going to be the 3-year-old champion. I mean, that was the path journalism was going to end up here. If he ends up losing that race, if he comes out with a bunch of cuts and scrapes, he misses the
Belmont, he gets through there and he runs third like a normal horse would have.
Yeah,
right.
But then he doesn't go to the Belmont. Yeah, he's already got the grade 1 win from the Santa Anita Derby. But really the big grade 1s everybody looks at are these, obviously the Triple Crown races, and then the ones that come
Saratoga.
the Travers, the Haskell, those races. And so that puts a lot of pressure on you to make sure that he's going to win one of those races and he doesn't have something weird happen again in one of them. So the amount of relief that took off of Michael, you could see it. I remember we had found out that he was supposed to be at the barn sometime between 6 and 7. We found that out on Preakness night. He showed up, I think, somewhere between 7:30 and 8. And he walks up, and he's like, the celebration had gone on too long the night before. He's like, I thought about making it at 6. Wasn't going to happen.
Good for them. I'm glad that they got to have that moment, because it is interesting in a business where these guys run hundreds of races a year. A guy like McCarthy probably has 500-600 starters in a year. Just the emotional drain of a race like this with a horse of this caliber on a stage like this, you can tell it got to him. And congratulations to all of them. And frankly, in a week where there was a bunch of consternation about the Derby winner not being there, the second place horse showed up and ran his eyeballs out.
Yeah.
And that's all we can ask for as horse racing fans.
Yeah, and you look at a big run from Sandman too, coming out of 2 weeks. Yet Goal Oriented was not coming out of the Derby, but he was coming in off 2 weeks. He ran very well.
Yep.
American Promise, I think, just didn't really get his trip. So I don't know.
He really did.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of his performance.
Once he was in like third, and he had a horse kicking.
He got checked back a little bit on the clubhouse turn, and we talked to Lucas last week. He's not a horse you can start and stop, and I thought probably being in that Gosker position, that second on the outside, would have been a good spot for him. But outside of him, the other 3 that came off the 2 weeks rest ran very well. You go back to last year's Preakness, the winner was coming off 2 weeks rest from the Pate Mile, and the Derby produced the second and the third place finishers.
Yep.
We're seeing those horses still run well. So
20 winners of the last 20 Triple Crown races. Does that continue at the Belmont, in your opinion, or does sovereignty and or journalism win the Belmont? Because that's an incredible trend if you think about it. Literally since Justifies Belmont, we have not had a repeat winner in any of the Triple Crown races.
I think
it's an incredible trend.
I know. I think one of the 2 wins it.
Okay.
But am I shocked if Baeza wins? No.
Right.
Am I shocked if one of these other horses ends up stepping up and winning it? No. We'll see what the field ends up being over the next couple of weeks, what pace scenario is going to end up being and everything like that. But I'm not sure really if we have any real speed signed on. So if Rodriguez can get back into form and can make it, he's going to be
Rodriguez is an interesting one, right?
Yeah.
If East Avenue ends up making the trip for whatever reason.
Yeah. Which, we'll see what Godolphin decides there. I don't know if he would, but
right, because Sovereignty's already going to be there, right?
Yeah. So now different trainers though, so that might play a role in them both being there. So we'll see how the field shakes up. But right now, I think at this point in time, I think we have a clear 2 horses that are the top 2 3-year-olds. Maybe a horse like Baeza, maybe a horse like Rodriguez can sneak into that with a big performance in the Belmont, and as they're developing, or somebody else comes on and develops. Maybe Gosger is just starting to hit his best stride or something.
Maybe Citizen gets back to it too. We don't know. I mean, Derby
he gets a little rest.
Yeah,
when it comes back.
The Derby's an impossible measuring stick for so many horses.
But I felt like going into the Derby, journalism and sovereignty, a lot of people felt like those were the top 2 going into the Derby. And I think coming out of the Preakness, obviously one of them has won both races, but I think, it is rare to get where it will, at least in recent years, where the top 2 3-year-olds are the ones winning the Triple Crown races. And it would be great to see one of the 2 of them win the Belmont again, and that trend of all these different winners. But man, I would love to get the 2 of them side by side, turning for home. They just made their moves for the lead.
Let's go.
And just see them throw down Alidar firm style down the stretch. I think that would be great for racing.
More likely, we get a slight drop in wagering on the Belmont, or because of what we've seen from sovereignty and journalism and the potential of a rematch, we actually get another great hand.
Sandman's not going, so I don't know.
What a great question, right?
Yeah.
Here's the other part, and I'm I am so glad to see so many people in our circles on the media side embracing Griffin Johnson, being positive about him, because he even mentioned after the Preakness how happy he was that the handle was up.
Yeah.
So that he's already, like, literally only took him 2 weeks to realize how important that is.
Yep.
That's it. That's all it took, people. He'll be fine. Everything will be fine. People will figure out the game as they get into it. It's fine. Like, let that go. So I was really, really happy to see that. A reminder, too, the weather isn't the only thing that heats up in June, having produced 2-time Breeders' Cup winners, Stormy Liberal and Golden Sense, as well as Grade 1 winners in Adair Manor, Yapone, and Warlike Goddess. The OBS June 2-year-olds and horses of racing age sale is the place to find ready-made talent ahead of the summer's top races. Before the juvenile auction season comes to an end, come see what the 2-year-old source of the world has to offer at OBS June 17 and 18. Certainly appreciate our friends at OBS hanging out with us here on BloodHorse Monday. Kind of a down week for graded stakes. We'll see a trio of stakes at Santa Anita a week from today. We won't have time to preview those, unfortunately, on this show because the draw will happen after we're here. But it includes the Hollywood Gold Cup, which, of course, is one of the classic races out west. We get that Grade 1 Shoemaker Mile as well, and the Grade 1 Gamely, which is a 9-furlong race for fillies and mares as well. Always a fun day of racing at Santa Anita. So many of those Monday cards are really, really great out west. The great race place, easy for me to say, and not great rate. They're not selling mortgages at Santa Anita.
They're
not anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was more the 70s.
Was it?
I hear a lot about 70s horse racing in the mortgages.
Okay.
So
I'll take your word for that. I wasn't around back then.
I wasn't either. But we will look for those. And of course, we always encourage you at this time on the episode to check out BloodHorse Magazine. You can check out the QR code at the bottom there if you're watching us on YouTube. Get that delivered to your house. And of course, if you haven't signed up for BloodHorse Daily, you can find that at the website as well at bloodhorse.com. Completely free to you. Shows up in your email inbox every day. Keeps you up to date on what's going on in the world of horse racing at no cost to you. But of course, get that magazine, get it on your coffee table, make it look just as good as you possibly can. Well, for Sean, I'm Louie. This has been BloodHorse Monday for May 19, 2025, a post-Preakness edition, a post-Old Hilltop edition of the program. By the way, if I hear New Hilltop one more time, I'm done. I'm out of horse racing. We're not doing that anymore. Are you one of those people? Are you a New Hilltop person?
Yes. I told you last week. That's what Jenny Reese and I are trying to coin that phrase. So it's if you've heard it a lot from that sounds like it's working. New Hilltop.
Thanks, Jenny.
The BloodHorse is dedicated to the improvement of thoroughbred breeding and racing for over 100 years. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and save BloodHorse Monday on all your platforms. For the latest news, analysis, and insights, visit us at bloodhorse.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.